Hi, this video will be about the complete disassembly and repair of the auxiliary air valve. I will show how to open it up and everything, and so hopefully after watching this video you can do your own repair, or if you see what I'm doing, you can order a repair over the bidder website. So what I'm going to do is show how this works, and first of all there is a hard and an easy version. The hard version is where you have to open up the auxiliary air valve, the easy version is where you don't. And the way you do that is you would measure the resistance between the two pins in the back, and the ones I have here are all between 30 and 60 ohm. So I cannot say honestly that this is the limit, but mine are between 30 and 60 ohm, so I don't know, let's say you need to measure between 10 and 100 ohm or something. Anyway, it would be tens of ohms. If you see mega ohm, something is not right, and in this case of that particular one, that was the one where I had infinite resistance, and then finally saw how badly corroded the contacts were, and once I had cleaned these up it came to the 46 or something that it should have, the 126. So the first thing, as I say, you do is to check the resistance here. If you're in the tens of ohms, you're fine. The next thing you do is you look through the assembled piece for the air gap at room temperature. And I'm going to show you some the typical air gaps that I see in the video. Here you can see for all three types the air gap that you should see at room temperature, and this is based in version 1 and 3 on looking at new old stock units, and both basically are open 30 degrees from fully closed. I cannot say the same thing about version 2 because I don't have one here, neither used nor new old stock, but I assume with all the mechanics inside being the same that they too should be 30 degrees from fully closed, and that's what you see here in the middle. So if you look through the auxiliary air valve in fully assembled state, you should see these gaps. If you don't, then you need to work on it. So what you should see is, as I said, these gaps, and then the next thing you should do is put it in the freezer and check if the gap has increased. It should have increased. If it doesn't, then something's wrong inside. But if it does increase, you have a working auxiliary air valve that somewhat works. So the next thing you would do is put 12 volts on it, and if you do that from a car battery, be careful, you're not going to die of 12 volt, but they can deliver enormous currents, so you want to put a fuse in one of the lines just to make sure that nothing bad happens. And what you need to see is, regardless how big the gap is, you need to see it fully close. So if you have verified all that, you have your resistance and it closes, then you are in good shape and might get away with just adjusting the nut in the back. As you might remember from the other video, I'm talking about this nut here that you need to loosen, and then what happens, this, you can see the air gap here a bit, it will change the air gap at the initial air gap. So if you are lucky, you can adjust it and tighten the nut in the back again, and then you're fine. That means if that gets you back to that specified, what I think is a specified air gap at room temperature, then you're fine. Then you can just put it back in the car and the car should start. If that does not work, then it's going to be a bit harder. That means that you have to disassemble the part, and that's what I'm going to show you in the video. And after disassembly I will show a a bunch of time-lapse videos. Once again, time compression is 60:1, so 1 second is 1 minute. And I will show every one of these will be from, in my case, -18 / 0 degree Fahrenheit, so -18 Celsius, 0 degree Fahrenheit, out of the freezer, 12 volt, see it fully close, see it open up again to room temperature, see it close from room temperature, and go back to room temperature. And I'll do that for before the repair, to see how small the air gap was and what the closing time is at that air gap. Then if I can get away with moving the screw, I will do that, and then show that cycle, -18, close, open, close, open. And after that, with the same thing from parts from missingparts.de. And once again, I'm not affiliated with them, I just use their parts and report what I'm finding. And that is the one with the softer spring, which gives you a bigger opening and a slower closing time, which would mean that it's active longer while the car is warming up. So that should be helpful. And I'm also going to show just the deflection of the bimetallic strip sideways, how it moves. And after that, I'm going to show reassembly and then verify that it works, or if it works, hopefully. But there's no reason, if I get it working, then putting it together should not make any difference. And once that has happened, I'm going to compare that with another time lapse to the new old stock unit, and afterwards test it on the car. The last thing I'm going to try to do, and I have already found out it's not as easy as I thought, is a troubleshooting chart. Just starting. Do you have resistance? Yes, no. Or do you have a defined resistance? So you have either tens of ohms or you have infinite ohm or something in the mega ohm, kilo ohm range. So then, yes, go further down, check the air gap at room temperature. No, go and clean the contacts, that sort of thing. But at the moment it's a bit messy. I hope to clean it up to give you a logical and relatively easy to follow troubleshooting chart to do the repair on one of these. So the first thing that needs to be done is these little rivet heads here need to be chiseled off, and then I need to go in the space where the rivet was with a 3mm drill, and no more than 3mm deep. Okay, I do not know when the camera decided to stop recording. The rivet heads have been chiseled off, and I have drilled the 3mm holes. I haven't gone all the way down to 3mm. I'm trying to see if I can get the cover off with a little bit less. If not, I have to go on drilling. So next thing is to bend open this ridge here, and it has to be done with a heat gun, because if you don't use a heat gun, you're gonna destroy the rim here. It's just gonna break off. One thing I noticed, I took the wrong screwdriver. It needs to have a really sharp square edge. So this is the one I used before. I'm gonna go on with this. do not touch this thing with your bare hands. It's extremely hot now. Okay, here we go. That is one open auxiliary air valve. I'm gonna use a belt sander to get rid of these little rivet remains to have a flat surface. So this was just 3-4 seconds and now it looks like this. And that was a bad thing. Okay, what popped off? The shutter popped off, but what's worse, the little pin in the middle is gone too. So I need to find that now. Okay, this goes under lesson learned. I'm gonna look for this later on. I'm gonna continue with another part, with a pin from another auxiliary air valve, and then go from there. What's next is I'm going to show you the gymnastics that this little thing does. Once again with 60 to 1 time compression, so once again 1 minute is going to be 1 second, and I'll do this with this out of the freezer. Oh, I found the pin. I was lucky. It fell in here. Okay, so I'm very happy about that. Okay, now I'm going to clean everything, and the next thing is going to be the time compression videos of this open with the original parts, and then with the missing parts kit. You have just seen the time compression videos, and it is, I realized I would have gotten away with just adjusting the adjustment screw in the back, but I wanted to open this anyway to show the repair. So now I have completed this with missing parts, components, and the next step is to put it back together. And what they say is to first close these holes with some JB weld type material that they supply, and then roll it out into a string, and then put the cover on. And once the cover is on, to go around and squeeze it in here. Okay, so this is what they supply with the kit. They say you need about half of it for one valve. I'm gonna do that, and then the next step is to knead it until it is uniform gray, not black and white. I'm gonna do that off camera. So the mixing is done, it's now gray, and they say the first thing you do is take little pieces off and plug the holes in the back. So that would be one here, it's really important that this thing is airtight, so it's not pretty, but this is what it looks like. I'll do that for all four. Okay, these gloves are not the best thing to use, so I have something that looks like this. Not pretty, but you want to get this all the way around the perimeter, so you're gonna put this, just make sure that the center pin is all the way seated, then put the cover on, make sure you get the orientation right, this actually wants to be in this position, and then the next thing is to start putting this around the perimeter. And I've forgotten one big step, that is to degrease this. I have to start again. A little bit of brake parts cleaner, and now let's do this again. So once again, you want to push this into this gap here. I don't know what the time is this needs to set. That it's in the instructions, but I just forgot the number. But I think at the latest 24 hours or something like that, maybe quicker. But you are not gonna have to worry while you are working with it that it's gonna set on you. Not exactly the prettiest thing in the world, but as long as the car starts and this does its job again, I'm happy with it. Now it looks right. So now I have to squeeze this all in again. Okay, I just tried. I held this closed and put some suction on this, and it's completely airtight. So this is what it should be. And so once again, this is a repaired auxiliary air valve that now needs a bit of paint, a bit of cleaning. Maybe in the process of cleaning I can smooth this out a bit better, but I'll wait until tomorrow. The only thing I can do tonight is to measure the closing time. This, well, I'm probably gonna wait until tomorrow on that one too, just in case. But that should be it. And as I said, with this one I would have gotten away with loosening this screw and adjusting it upwards, so in this direction away from the bracket. But I wanted to use the missing parts components, and this gives me a larger air temperature, room temperature opening than the original Bosch parts, and this is what I want. This gives me higher startup RPM and probably a longer closing time. I'm gonna measure that tomorrow and compare that to the Bosch new old stock unit and see if this really is the 3:4 ratio that I calculated in that other video, and that missing parts told me they were after a 3:4 ratio in the closing time. So basically, if the original closes in 6 minutes, they wanted this to close in 8 minutes, that sort of thing. But there we are, and I'll measure the closing time tomorrow, then put this thing in the car and see if it starts, and if the idle speed will be regulated down as I expected. This is shutter angle versus time for auxiliary air valve 0, 280, 140, 1192, and the 2 is my own number that I added to the number because I need to distinguish the 119s I have from each other. So 1192 is the one that I've just repaired, and before I closed it I measured the shutter angle in degrees from stop, away from stop, and blue is the data for the Bosch parts, and red is the data for the missing parts components. So you can see that it has 3 regions for reasons I don't understand and don't really care to explore, but it doesn't concern us anyway because the shutter is completely closed at 16 degrees, which is the dotted line, the dotted horizontal line. So it is of no consequence how it behaves at angles close to the stop. Anyway, so what you can see is that the ratio of course changes because of I'm coming out of the x-axis at 0, but if you look at close to the 16 degree line, you do have something like 180 seconds over 240 compared versus 240. So 240 over 180, divide both by 60, and you have exactly a 4:3 ratio. So it is perfect the way they say it should behave, and that's also in the other video what I calculated for the forces, that it would be a 4:3 ratio. So this is consistent with what they say and what I calculated, and here I have now achieved 320 second closing time, as I mentioned before, versus from the new old stock unit it is a 292 seconds, I think. Also, you can not compare between different auxiliary air valves for Bosch and missing parts. It has to be in the same because for some reason the bimetallic strips behave differently. So they have different zero deflection and different deflection at full at closing. So you have to compare the parts in the exact same auxiliary air valve, which is what I have done here. Okay, so the repair is done. This is what it looks like, and I put a bit of paint on it, gave it a new screw in the back. This of course doesn't look too pretty. I have to work on improving that, but it's completely airtight. If you put your finger in the back and try to put suction on that side, you're not going to get anything through, so it's perfectly airtight. And now the next step is to test start it, put it in the car and do a start and see how it works. Okay, this now has a nice big air gap and a closing time of 320 seconds as opposed to almost no air gap, and it wouldn't start a car, and 70 seconds of closing time. So this should be an improvement. The car has not been running in 2 weeks, so it's also just a very nice way to do a cold start for testing that air valve. So this was perfect cold start and warm-up behavior with a slightly larger cold start opening. RPM went a bit higher, but that is something I don't mind at all. It started at a relatively high RPM and then slowly regulated down. As I said, the repaired auxiliary air valve now has a 320 second closing time compared to 290 seconds for the new old stock unit and 70 seconds before, when there was almost no air gap. So I'm happy with that. The only strange thing on those engines is that it regulated down to about 1000 RPM, and when you flip the throttle just shortly, it goes down to 900. So this is a bit weird, but I don't know what this is about, and I don't really care. So it will be just fine to drive. The next thing to do is explain the troubleshooting chart. This is the troubleshooting chart I was talking about, and I hope it's as complete as I think it is and as logical. The arrow colors have meaning. Red means no, green means yes, and you would start at the upper left hand corner and check the resistance and see if you have tens of ohms. Mine all have between 30 and 60 ohm, but I only have a fraction of the available auxiliary air valves, so there might be, I don't know, 100 or even more, or down to 10 ohm, I have no idea, but tens of ohms. If you see kilo ohm or mega ohm, something's wrong. So check that first. If you get that, the next thing is to check for a visible air gap. So you can see if you see any light, and if you see light, then you can go to the next step, apply 12 volts. Then you should see the air gap go away. And after that, if it does go away, you can throw it in the freezer for 2-3 hours, and then it should be as open as it gets. And it should be larger than what you saw at room temperature. If it is not larger than what you saw at room temperature, then something's wrong. If it is, then the next thing is compare the room temperature air gap that you see to the little drawings on in the last box. This is what I was describing in the other video. I have new old stock for the left and the right one, but not for the middle one. But on the left and the right one show these gaps at room temperature. And when I did my airflow video with the little paper cutouts, I realized that at least the left and the right one looked like this at an angle of 30 degrees with respect between shutter and the stop. So if you see these gaps at room temperature, I would assume that because all the internal mechanics are the same, that also the middle one, which I don't have, should look like this, because that's once again the 30-degree value. And I cannot confidently claim that, but I can say it's highly likely that this is what you should see. So once again, look, if you see these gaps at room temperature, if you see that, this means you have a fully functional auxiliary air valve and don't need to do anything. Now, what happens if you don't go this row down with yes? If you don't see a resistance on the upper left, if you don't see resistance, then you have to clean the contacts and see if that makes a difference. On one of mine it did make a huge difference. That had infinite ohm and I thought it was broken, but cleaning the contacts gave me something like 45 ohms. If that works, then you go back to check for a visible air gap. If it doesn't work, then something is likely wrong between the pins, the contact pins, and the coil inside that's wrapped around the bimetallic strip. You would have to drill out the tension pin in the back, and I do that with 3 mm or less, because after that I want to put in a worm screw to tighten it again and keep it in place. But either way, you need to drill that out and pull the bimetallic strip out, but be really careful. Once you pull that strip out, the shutter will snap to completely shut, and then you will not get that bimetallic strip back in without disassembling the auxiliary air valve. So what you need to do is you need to block the shutter with a screwdriver in the open position. So if you do have a hole, put a screwdriver through and keep it in that position. Then you can put the bimetallic strip out, repair it if possible, and then put it back in, and it will work. But as I said, it will snap shut if you just pull the strip out, and then you have to open it anyway. If there is nothing obvious, there is no broken connection or anything, I honestly don't know what to say. I cannot give any further repair recommendation with any confidence. So at that point I would consider it permanently broken. If you do get in the end to the tens of ohms, you go back to the left side and go down. And once again, if you have no visible air gap, if it does not move under 12 volt, if it does not get bigger in the freezer, something is wrong and you need to open it. So then you, once it's open, you can check what is going on. And sometimes the spring is broken. That is when, for example, when 12 volts don't do anything. If the spring is broken, nothing is moving the shutter. And then once you have disassembled it and replaced the part that needed replacing, the next step is to once again adjust the air gap. And if you get to the picture, if you see if you see air gaps like in the lower left corner, then you're fine again, and then your auxiliary air valve should work. So I hope this helps, and if I find anything that's wrong there, I'll add to that troubleshooting chart, but for now I'm going to put that in the description of a video as a link, and that should be it. So in conclusion, I was wondering what have I learned, and there are several things. The first thing is I will now clean the auxiliary air valve before I disassemble it, and when I have taken the cover off, from now on, after having seen that parts fly off, I'm gonna take the auxiliary air valve, put it into a plastic bag, and then disassemble it in a plastic bag. Then I know nothing can fly off and get lost. I mean, this would have been mildly catastrophic if I had lost the center pin here. Also, when the internals are clean, I would then probably sand this area here, and on the cover I would go sand the side and maybe this part here, so that the adhesive has something to grab onto, and that it's a good seal. I mean, I was getting away with the other one that I hadn't cleaned, but it's better to do it that way. What I will also try is to bend open the rim a little less. Maybe that leads to a better repair. It doesn't look so bulky, the piece of adhesive that's around. So that would be a thing to do, and make the adhesive part look a bit prettier by using some kind of tool to smooth it out. But that is pretty much it. But I can confidently say now that I have successfully repaired what was a dead, useless auxiliary area. I'm quite happy about that. I hope that this video series helps you as well. I think I'm done here now. If something else comes up, I'm gonna make another video. Thanks for watching.